Before even arriving at the airport, the captain had received a thorough briefing about severe weather battering the island. The first officer received a text message from a friend, telling him another aircraft on its way into Honolulu had declared an emergency after experiencing severe turbulence. Despite the weather, they had every reason to believe they were in safe hands. The passengers had no idea that just moments after takeoff, things would start to go very wrong in the cockpit. The pilots were on high alert. He put the windshield wipers on high and turned on the weather radar, showing that things wouldn't get easier once airborne. As the plane reached about 1,000 feet, the captain lowered the nose slightly to allow the aircraft to accelerate. This is where things started to go wrong. Today we're diving deep into the chilling story of Flight 1722, where one mistake almost cost everyone on board their lives. On the afternoon of December 18, 2022, 271 passengers and 10 crew boarded a United Airlines Boeing 777 at Maui's Kahului Airport in Hawaii, bound for San Francisco. Before even arriving at the airport, the captain had received a thorough briefing about severe weather battering the island. The first officer received a text message from a friend, telling him another aircraft on its way into Honolulu had declared an emergency after experiencing severe turbulence. 20 passengers were taken to the hospital, 11 in serious condition. When they reached the aircraft, they told the flight attendants to remain seated throughout the climb for their safety. The captain had been with United Airlines for years, accumulating almost 20,000 flying hours, 5,000 of which were in the Boeing 777. The first officer, by comparison, was new to United Airlines and the 777, with just 120 hours on the aircraft and over 5,000 hours on all planes in total. He had been with Hawaiian Airways and was familiar with the weather around the Hawaiian Islands. At about 2:30, Flight 1722 pushed back from the gate at Maui. Despite the weather, they had every reason to believe they were in safe hands. United Airlines and the Boeing 777 both had excellent safety records. The passengers had no idea that just moments after takeoff, things would start to go very wrong in the cockpit. As the captain taxied through the rain out to runway 02 at Maui, he and the first officer discussed the weather they would be facing once airborne. The real danger was not the rain but the wind, specifically wind shear, where the wind rapidly changes its speed or direction over a short distance. It can be deadly to aircraft because if the wind suddenly starts coming from behind the aircraft, its speed can get so slow that it simply falls out of the sky. As the pilots made their way to the runway, the controller relayed multiple reports of low-level wind shear. The pilots were on high alert. The captain briefed the first officer on the wind shear escape maneuver, involving pushing the engines to maximum thrust and pulling the plane's nose to 15 degrees above the horizon. They expected to carry out this maneuver after takeoff. Preparing for wind shear involves more than briefings. The captain decided to extend the flaps to 20 degrees for takeoff and use maximum power rather than the reduced power setting normally used to save wear and tear on the engines. At about 2:45, the captain lined the massive 777 up on the runway. He put the windshield wipers on high and turned on the weather radar, showing that things wouldn't get easier once airborne. The two pilots were now poised to go. Once he received takeoff clearance, the captain spun the engines up to maximum thrust, unleashing incredible power. Within moments, the engines powered the aircraft to its takeoff speed of about 260 km per hour. The captain pulled back on his control column and lifted the plane into the sky. For the first few seconds, the climb was normal. As the plane reached about 1,000 feet, the captain lowered the nose slightly to allow the aircraft to accelerate. If the plane got too fast, the force of the air would damage the flaps. To prevent this and allow the plane to accelerate further, the captain told the first officer to raise the flaps. This is where things started to go wrong. The captain thought he had said flaps 5, while the first officer thought he said flaps 15. The captain now had a false picture of the plane's configuration, creating confusion that endangered everyone on board. The plane began to exceed the safe speed limit for the flaps. The captain quickly checked the flap indicator and saw they were set at 15 degrees, not 5 degrees as he had recalled. He immediately told the first officer to retract the flaps to 5 degrees, which he did, but the plane kept accelerating. Deep inside the clouds, the aircraft began to pitch down, entering a rapid descent. The captain, focused on the overspeed warning, inadvertently pushed the nose over, powering the plane towards the ocean below. The first officer, confused, saw the plane's nose dropping and shouted at the captain to pull the plane up. The captain yanked back on his control column, heaving the aircraft upwards, and pulled the power back to idle to allow the plane to round the vertical corner as quickly as possible. The passengers and crew were pressed violently into their seats as the plane bottomed out just 750 feet from the ocean. The terrain alarm sounded, alerting the pilots they were moments away from colliding with the sea. The plane pulled out of its descent and rocketed skywards. The captain slammed the engines to maximum thrust and brought the plane's nose to 20 degrees above the horizon, carrying out the terrain escape maneuver. After a few tense moments, The plane was safely away from the water. The captain eased forward on the control column, reduced power on the engines, and re-established the plane on its normal climb profile. The two pilots were shaken. The captain confirmed that none of the passengers were injured and decided to continue the flight to San Francisco. 4.5 hours later, after landing at San Francisco, the pilots reported the incident to United Airlines. However, it was only discovered 2 months later on Flight Radar 24 and reported by the aviation news site The Air Current. United Airlines determined the incident didn't need to be reported to the National Transportation Safety Board as it didn't meet their reporting criteria. As a result, the pilots were given additional training. This near disaster is a lesson in how quickly things can go wrong in an aircraft, even with modern safeguards against accidents. A simple loss of situational awareness by the captain, combined with poor weather and miscommunication around the flap setting, nearly caused a disaster. It's an open question whether the right lessons will be taken from this and similar incidents in recent years, or if it will take something more serious to spur the necessary action.